There's a company most people have never heard of. It doesn't make phones, it doesn't make laptops, it doesn't make a single product you'll ever touch. And yet without it, your phone doesn't exist, your car doesn't exist. Every AI chatbot, every data center, every fighter jet guidance system, none of it gets built. One company in the Netherlands has a total monopoly on the machine that makes the modern world possible. Today we're breaking down how ASML became the single point of failure for the entire global economy and why nobody can compete with it. Here's the stat that explains this entire video. Every single advanced computer chip on Earth, the ones inside your phone, inside every AI data center, inside every high-end car, passes through a machine that only one company in the world can build. Not one of the best, not the market leader, the only one. If ASML stops shipping machines tomorrow, the entire semiconductor industry hits a wall within a few years. Not a slowdown, a wall. So how does one Dutch company end up holding that much power? It comes down to physics, money, and 30 years of nobody else being willing to try. To make an advanced chip, you have to print circuits onto silicon that are smaller than a virus. The tool that does that is called an EUV lithography machine, and it's one of the most complicated pieces of manufacturing equipment humans have ever built. Each one is the size of a bus, made of over 100,000 parts, and has to be shipped in roughly 40 separate containers, then assembled on-site by a team of ASML's own engineers because no one else knows how to put it together. Here's the number that stops people. A single one of these machines costs between $200 and $400 million. Not the factory, not the whole production line, one machine. And the newest version, called High-NA EUV, pushes past $350 million each because it has to be precise enough to focus light down to a fraction of a nanometer, using mirrors so smooth that if you scaled one up to the size of Germany, the tallest bump on it would be less than a millimeter high. So if it's this profitable, why doesn't someone else just build a competing machine? Because the barrier to entry isn't money, it's 40 years of accumulated expertise spread across a supply chain nobody else has. The mirrors inside these machines are made by a German company, Zeiss, that spent decades perfecting optics precise enough for this exact job. The lasers come from another specialist supplier capable of producing industrial-grade light, powerful enough to vaporize droplets of tin thousands of times per second to generate the exact wavelength of light needed. That's the insider secret most people don't know. EUV light doesn't come from a bulb. It comes from blasting microscopic balls of molten tin with a laser twice in a vacuum chamber, 50,000 times a second, to create plasma that gives off exactly the right wavelength. Any single link in that chain, the optics, the lasers, the vacuum systems, the software, took decades to perfect. A competitor doesn't just need money. They'd need to independently reinvent 30 years of physics and engineering that ASML already is locked up through patents and supplier relationships. That's why only 3 companies on Earth can even afford to buy and operate these machines at scale: TSMC, Samsung, and Intel. Everyone who makes an advanced chip, NVIDIA, Apple, AMD, ultimately depends on one of those 3, which means they all ultimately depend on ASML. Here's where it gets uncomfortable if you're one of ASML's customers. Because there's no alternative, ASML doesn't have to compete on price, it sets the price. Reports from inside the industry describe fabs essentially having no leverage in negotiations. If TSMC wants the newest machine, TSMC pays what ASML asks, because refusing means falling behind competitors who did buy it. And ASML doesn't even need every customer to say yes immediately. Because it also controls the software updates and service contracts for the machines already installed in every fab on Earth, it can afford customers who hesitate on the newest hardware. It still owns the relationship either way. That's the part that makes this different from a normal monopoly. Most monopolies eventually get challenged by a cheaper alternative. Here, the cheaper alternative is falling behind in the most competitive industry on the planet, which for a chipmaker isn't really an alternative at all. So is this an unbreakable monopoly forever? Not quite. There are 2 real threats. The first is geopolitical. Export restrictions mean ASML can't sell its most advanced machines to China, and China has poured enormous resources into building its own domestic EUV alternative. Engineers there are reportedly testing a different light generation approach that could, in theory, sidestep some of ASML's patents. Most serious estimates put a working Chinese system several years away, and a truly competitive one further still, but several years away in an industry this valuable is not nothing. The second threat is closer to home. Some of ASML's own customers are pushing back on price. Reports suggest even TSMC, ASML's biggest customer, has explored ways to delay adopting the newest, most expensive machines by squeezing more performance out of the ones it already owns, rather than paying the premium for every new generation. That's a quiet form of resistance, not competing with ASML, but simply refusing to upgrade as fast as ASML would like. Neither of those cracks the monopoly today, but they're the two threads worth watching if you want to know whether this dominance still looks this total 10 years from now. So here's the real takeaway. ASML doesn't sell a product people want. It sells the only path to a product the entire world economy depends on. That's a different and much stronger position than even being the best in your industry. It's the same kind of leverage a handful of other companies quietly hold, the ones that don't make the flashy end product, but make the one tool nobody else can replace. If you want to see that same dynamic play out in a completely different industry, check out our breakdown on Reference Your Relevant Economics of Owning video. The playbook is eerily similar. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe. New economics breakdowns drop every week. See you in the next one.